Hey everybody, it's Katie Kimball from kitchenstewardship.com, and I'm delighted to have Catherine Clinton, a naturopath who started the Well Future business, here with me to interview today. We are talking about the things that live inside our bodies. And I have a great story to start out. My son is in 6th grade, and he was telling me, oh, in science we're learning about, like, what's that word? He goes, it's how, like, relationship between things. And I go, oh, like symbiotic relationships? He's like, yes, that's it. And I said, you should ask your teacher if you get to learn about the microbiome. I'm like, I did a cool interview about that, and I've like written about that and researched it. And he goes, you do science? Like, I thought you just did recipe. So he's learning a lot about my business this year as it continually applies to his science class, which is really fun. But I told him a little bit about the microbiome and how there are over like 3 trillion bacteria living in our bodies, and it's something like 3 pounds of our body is our human microbiome, and these little bacteria who are living inside us. And most of the time it is a symbiotic relationship, which is mutually beneficial, but not always. Sometimes it's more of a parasitic thing because there are good bacteria and bad bacteria. So keeping our microbiome healthy is all about feeding the good bacteria and, you know, killing or not supporting the bad bacteria, at least keeping the good bacteria army strong enough to fight off the bad guys. So when we talk about our microbiome, we're talking about things like probiotics and antibiotics and leaky gut and the foods we eat, and just the way our gut is balanced. Now, today though, we are moving forward into like a new frontier of research, basically, because also in our bodies, we apparently, and this is totally new to me, so I'm so geeked because I'm a total science geek, we have viruses also living in symbiotic and parasitic relationships. So I know practically nothing. I'm just going to be the question asker today, and Catherine is going to fill our brains for hopefully about 10 or 15 minutes. We'll keep it in a bite-sized chunk here for you. But we're going to talk about the virome. So because I'm such a newbie, and I think everyone else is too, this is like totally new research. What is the human virome? What are we even talking about here, Catherine?
Yeah, it is an exciting sort of subsect of the microbiome. And like you were saying, we've heard a lot of news in recent years about the gut microbiome. And that talk has been isolated to bacteria, like you were saying, the balance of good and bad bacteria and how that affects our health. And we've seen it impact our health in a number of different ways. You know, it impacts the cardiovascular system and the immune system, neurologically speaking, the development in utero. I mean, the list goes on and on. But, like I was saying, a subsect of this microbiome is dealing with the study of viruses, the virome, and how viruses impact our health. And it's absolutely fascinating. You know, viruses are actually the most abundant biological entity on the earth. So as impressed as we are about how the numbers stack up with the bacteria in the gut microbiome, the viruses, just the numbers are staggering. And we're seeing a lot of really fascinating research come out. So when we're talking about the virome, we've got the DNA and RNA viruses that we commonly think of that infect our cells and usually give us symptoms. You know, your cold and flu, your stomach bugs, your viral infections. Those are what we commonly think of. So we have those. We also have viral elements that have been inserted into our DNA over time. And lastly, a really fascinating class of viruses are called bacteriophages. And these are viruses that infect the bacteria in our gut microbiome. So, you know, the numbers, like I said, are staggering when it comes to viruses. And there's still a lot we don't know, but there's plenty of take home that we can glean from just the research in the last few years. For example, we're starting to really understand the importance of bacteriophages in our own immune system. So remember, bacteriophages are viruses that infect the bacteria of our gut microbiome. So they are completely harmless to us, to the host. There are no side effects, but they fight bacterial infections incredibly well without any of the side effects of antibiotics. And we'll save that for another day because that list goes on and on. So it's incredible to have that kind of option available to us. I've seen great success using bacteriophage therapy with patients in my practice with inflammatory bowel disease, which is just incredible. It's a common practice in Eastern Europe that's just starting to be practiced in the US with success. And like I said, without the myriad of side effects of antibiotics. So that is really, really a cool area of study that I'm really watching the research on. Another really fascinating study came out last year with mice and the norovirus. Now, the norovirus is what we commonly associate with a stomach bug and all the unpleasant side effects that has. Mm-hmm. And what these researchers did was they took a strain of norovirus and infected mice that had gone through a round of antibiotics. And of course, we know that antibiotics completely disrupt the gut microbiome. And what the researchers found was infecting with this strain of norovirus helped rebalance the gut microbiome, the viruses, the bacteria. And this is incredible. This is something that we've talked about just with probiotics and bacteria, but we're seeing this effect with viruses, and it's incredible. So the research is absolutely showing a positive influence on our health from these viruses, and it's exciting. So I look forward to seeing how the research unfolds and see what else we can learn.
Wow. Okay. So when I kind of said the human virome, but really it's part of the microbiome because the viruses were actually infecting the bacteria. And are they like making the bad bacteria sick, kind of? Is that the theory? So then the bad bacteria leaves us alone?
Yeah, it actually fights, kills, lyses the bacteria without the side effects that modern antibiotics have, the bacteriophages, which is just incredible, And like I said, it's been used in Eastern Europe for quite a while because they didn't have access to antibiotics. And so the research is pretty full, and it's just incredible to have such an option and to see that relationship between the viruses and the bacteria in the microbiome.
How cool is that? So in your practice, you said you've seen success with patients with IBD, and that's inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's and colitis, which we actually have one of those in my household here, but it's pretty under control. So you're saying you take bacteriophages, which are viruses, and you literally infect a person with it, but it doesn't infect the person, it just infects the bacteria that's messing up their guts. Is that accurate?
That's absolutely accurate. We use it just like a pill, like a probiotic supplement, and it works incredibly well. And we don't understand all the pieces of it, but what these bacteriophages are doing is they're regulating the microbiome, not just the viral part of it, but the bacterial components as well. And we know that with inflammatory bowel disease, that the bacterial balance and the microbiome balance is such a huge player. So this is a way to really sidestep some of the antibiotics side effects that we've seen for years treating IBD with antibiotics, rounds of antibiotics that leave the microbiome vulnerable and disruptive, and we just don't have that with the bacteriophages, which is awesome. It's a really fun clinical thing to have on hand.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. It makes me think of in nature when we've brought in species of an insect or whatever to kill another insect that's harming our plants, or we've the birds that hang out on the backs of the wildebeests in Africa that eat the bugs off of them or something. It's like this kind of three-way symbiosis, and it's so cool. Wow.
It absolutely is. And you look at the research, they're using some of the genome technology to classify these viruses and these bacteriophages, and there are so many of them. The likelihood of reaching resistance with them is, it's not a likely situation. What people are doing is they are adding, once viruses or bacteria show that kind of resistance, they just add a different bacteriophage, and it kicks in and stops the resistance and continues fighting the bacterial infections. It's really amazing.
Wow, so that's another layer where they kind of beat antibiotics, because with antibiotics, after some time, the bacteria can begin to show resistance to that drug. So it's like another win. That's so cool. Now, is there anything for us? I mean, this is an obvious like treatment of a certain condition with a certain bacteriophage, which is a virus. This is not something that I'm going to do at home. Is there anything worthy to talk about with the virome as far as keeping my own virome in balance, or is this more of just a treatment sort of research thing?
Well, it's actually both, Katie. It's providing great clinical alternatives for IBD and digestive stuff, as well as skin grafts. I mean, it goes on and on, the phage therapy. But there are some really cool take-homes that we can do at home.
Okay.
There's Dr. Lim out of Western University School of Medicine did some really fascinating research with infants and looking at their virome and how their virome changes parallel the bacterial gut microbiome changes. So we're seeing that early infancy, early childhood being a really critical window. And Katie, we've talked about this before, and it holds true with the virome, that diversity is the key. So diversity in diet, you want to have a large range of foods. When you look at traditional diets, in a class like tubers, you're looking at over 120 different varieties of tubers.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's really what we're needing, that variety. And of course, when you go to the farmer's market and the grocery store, we don't have quite that range, but there are a lot of different things out there that we can be supplementing in our diet, just these whole foods that provide the fiber and the phytonutrients to keep your virome healthy. So diversity in diet, diversity in environment as well. We need to be getting outside daily. Nature is the ultimate source of microbes for keeping your virome healthy. Even opening the windows to your house, getting your house filled with houseplants can really impact the health of your virome, because we need that diversity in our environment. And just little things like that can make a huge impact. And of course, avoiding the things that disrupt the virome. Medicines like antibiotics, which disrupt the bacterial and viral biomes of the gut. Medicines like proton pump inhibitors used for reflux, for too much acid, often used for GERD in infants with colic. And these are doing a number on our viromes. So making sure that we keep those medicines to a minimum, to the absolute necessary type situation, is important. And of course, avoiding processed foods and overly sanitized environments, pulling out the bleach and wiping down the counters is not helpful to our virome. So those are some really easy take-homes for us: diversity in diet and environment, and making sure that we're avoiding some of the medicines and cleaning products and processed foods that can really disrupt our virome. So there is stuff that we can do at home, which is pretty exciting too.
Yeah, and in some ways, that's so simple. I mean, diversifying your diet it can be difficult, because it's way easier to just do steamed broccoli one night and sauteed green beans the next night and frozen peas the next, and then back to the broccoli, especially in the winter here in Michigan. So that's like, for me, that's a challenge, but isn't it so good to hear that maybe cleaning a little less, like strongly, like cut the bleach, that is actually easy. It's like, relax, go outside, play in the dirt, maybe even wear your shoes in the house. Oh my gosh, and don't worry about like tracking in the outdoors, because I admit, like, I'm kind of a middler. Like, I'm not super sanitary. I don't have bleach anymore, but I do say, like, hey, will you touch the potty? Like, wash your hands right away. Or, like, don't wear your shoes in the house. Like, outside is gross. Like, we're gonna get fertilizers all over our house, whenever. So, like, I'm definitely affected by my culture in some ways, and like know when to push back in others. So it's just a good reminder, like, just relax a little bit.
Yeah, relax a little bit. And I, with patients, I call it the common sense rule. Like, we weren't put here in these houses hermetically sealed from the environment. We are meant to be interacting, and that's really where true health comes. We could do a whole hour-long or more segment on what the outside, what nature and dirt is providing for our virome, because it's amazing, and it's common sense. We are meant to breathe fresh air and get our hands and toes in the dirt. So it is a nice reminder. I think oftentimes I get so rabbit hole. I just go down chasing the latest research, and then it comes out to be, yeah, go outside,
Again.
eat whole food. So it's reassuring, and it's great to implement that kind of stuff into our lifestyle, because it impacts our overall health.
So cool. Well, thank you so very much, Dr. Catherine, for being with us. And I just want to talk for a second about Well Future, your company. And we use the Well Belly probiotics daily with Gabe. And when we travel, because I have a liquid one for my bigger kids, but when we travel, I use the powder for everybody. And it's always been a great, well-balanced probiotic for little kids, and really gentle on bellies for even infants, especially if you can't breastfeed, or if you happen to have antibiotics in labor or early on in infancy. So important to rebuild that microbiome, and probiotics really are the only way. Like, when you were talking about taking a pill of viruses, I was like, oh, like, it made me squirm a little bit. And then I thought, that's dumb, because I'm totally on board with consuming probiotics, which are living bacteria, in my yogurt and my water kefir and my probiotic supplements. So there's no different consuming viruses meant to infect my bacteria, but it sounded a little squeamish. But anyway, Well Belly is an awesome probiotic for infants and children, and it's getting even better, because tell me about what the carrier is being changed right now, right? Or just changed?
Yes, we just changed over to a whole food carrier. Yeah, it's all probiotic supplements that are powdered take the organisms and put them on a carrier. And most of the carriers are heavily processed, to break them down into something that dissolves easily, your maltodextrin, which is great. It's this pretty white powder, and it just disappears into liquid. But I'm a naturopathic physician, and I've got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I actually just went through an annual continuing ed environmental medicine conference, and it's just staggering the amount of stuff that we're exposed to and that our kids are exposed to every day. So to me, every bit counts. Even though these probiotic carriers are small, they're usually a daily exposure. So we wanted to avoid this daily exposure to these heavily processed carriers. And what we're using now is just a whole food carrier of organic bananas and organic apple powder. And simple. And there's nothing else added to the mix. It's just those whole food powders, so that we can avoid that daily exposure and just get back to the way it's supposed to be with whole foods. I do own a supplement company, and with my patients and with my family and with myself, I find there are times that supplementation is absolutely needed to get that overall health. But I am a huge proponent of the whole food and the probiotic fermented foods. We need, like I was saying, I can't beat the drum loud enough. Diversity is the key. We need it from all angles. So I'm really excited to be offering a probiotic on a whole food carrier.
So cool. Well, thank you so much again for being here. I know as a busy mom and a naturopathic physician with a thriving practice, this was a big chunk out of your day, but we so appreciate it. And I just can't wait to share this with the Kitchen Stewardship readers. Have a great day, Catherine.
Thank you, Katie. You have a great day too.
Mhm.